What happened to me happened on the third day of August, 1979. I had a internal rupture. It was as a result of a ulcer forming on an artery, and it just kept on to the wall away till it got so thin it ballooned out. They call that aneurysm. And of course, this was, as far as I was concerned, a silent ulcer because it gave no symptoms before this, and all of a sudden, when it reached a place where it could not withstand the pressure of the heartbeat, it popped like sticking a pin in a balloon. And this, of course, led to a local clinic, then a local hospital, and then transferred me from the local hospital to a regional medical center after bringing me out of shock the third time. And it was halfway between the first hospital and the regional medical center when all of a sudden my vital life signs failed, and the paramedic actually picked up the radio telephone microphone and called the hospital head. He reported the patient has died. All the vital life signs have failed. Prepare the emergency room in an attempt to revive him and have a physician meet us on the ramp. Approximately 15 minutes later, we arrived at the Regional Medical Center at Macomb, Mississippi, where Dr. Sidney Ross was standing on that ramp as they took my body out of the ambulance, and it was there that, with a razor blade outside the hospital, he cut my chest and began to infuse blood directly into one of the main veins. They worked on me in that emergency room. They carried me in there. About a minute later, I was in the emergency room. 6 other physicians assisted him, and they worked on over around about this body in that emergency room from 5 p.m. till 12 midnight. They very quickly restored my vital life signs, but they couldn't seem to get them stabilized. It was all the way up to midnight before they became stable enough to transfer me to ICU, where Dr. Ross and some of his assistants continued to work on me throughout the wee hours of the morning. About 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, the vital life signs began to fail again. He come out and told my wife what was happening and said that they'd done everything humanly possible. The only other thing that they might attempt would be surgery, but it would be major surgery, and in his expert opinion, no human could, who was in such a weakened condition as I was, who had lost such a vast amount of blood, could possibly withstand it, but they decided to attempt it anyway. Around 6 a.m., they carried me into surgery, where Dr. Ross and his assistants continued to work on me throughout the wee hours of the morning. In fact, they worked on me from 6 o'clock to sometime around close to 4. The surgery lasted for over 10 hours, and this, of course, was occurring on Saturday. I had lost sight of the physical world on Friday afternoon in that ambulance, and I never regained my eyesight as far as the physical world was concerned again until Monday morning. This was a long and arduous battle that those medical people put up from 4:45 p.m. Friday afternoon till 7 o'clock Monday morning in an attempt to preserve whatever spark of life that was in this human body. Now, this entire weekend, somewhere in this weekend, I had a tremendous spiritual experience. I can't tell you how long it lasted. I can't tell you how long, where it started or where it ended. Because in the spiritual realm, there is no concept of time. There's no way to tell time. There's no time there. It is void of time. As far as my memory is concerned, when I lost sight of the physical world, the next thing I remembered was I was in this awful dark place. No light whatsoever. And it was in this place that, since I had never experienced a place of being total darkness before, I immediately felt abandoned or forsaken, all alone. When suddenly out of that vast darkness, an object appeared right before my eyes. Now, I don't know how I saw this thing, because I saw it with no light. There's absolutely no light in the veil. and this thing looked like a ribbon or a ticker tape just suspended in space, turning round and around and around before my eyes. You've seen pictures, no doubt, of this confetti tape they throw out the windows from the skyscrapers in New York in these great parades where they're honoring some dignitary. How these tapes slowly twirl down, down, down till they reach the ground. Well, that's the way this thing looked, only it was a single tape like that, just slowly twirling down before my eyes. As it turned the first time I read it, it was a verse of Scripture, a single verse of Scripture out of the Bible. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27. It is appointed unto all men once to die, after this the judgment. I read that the first time it turned, the second time it turned, and the third time it turned. Upon reading it the third time, it dawned on me what was happening. This was God's way of revealing to me that I had met my appointed time to die. Up until that very moment, I viewed physical death basically as all humans do. We all know that we have to die. But subconsciously, we've dealt with that. In our subconscious, we view physical death as something that happens to others. It don't happen to us. We put it out of our mind and keep going. I had put that truth or knowledge so far out of my mind that I had to read that verse of Scripture 3 times before I realized it wasn't others. It was me. It was my time to die. Now, when you face reality, face death with that, physical death with that kind of reality, it takes on a whole new perspective. In the first place, I didn't want to die. You see, I was involved in a political campaign when this happened. I was running for the office of criminal sheriff. I'd served for over 26 years in law enforcement. After I retired from law enforcement, I continued to work in industrial security, working for several oil companies. My job was to procure the equipment, train the personnel, and be responsible for the prevention and use of illegal drugs in the offshore oil industry. So I practically spent most of my adult life in law enforcement work. But I had been ordained a minister of the gospel when I was barely out of my teens, and I continued to practice my Christian faith while involved in law enforcement, as I believed it. And but you see, I grew up in what we call back home the basic mainstream of the fundamentalist movement, where most of our teaching revolved around what we call the positive aspects of the gospel: love, mercy, grace, and salvation. These things are the bedrock of Christianity. But there really is another side to Christianity, and there's another side to the Bible that really talks about a just God, a God who demands accountability and responsibility. And in fact, there is a spiritual realm that I knew absolutely nothing about, because we really never talked about that. We never talked about devils and demons, because we considered those things unimportant. Or, in fact, some teachers I had when I was in the seminary, and I did attend the seminary, some of the teachers I had viewed the Bible reference to demon spirits as being actually figments of the imagination of some of the early writers.